Today's episode of Mark 42's WHOniverse is brought to you by Audible.com. You get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Mark42. There are over 150,000 titles to choose from your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. You lucky guys. That's www.audibletrial.com/Marku42.
Hi, this is Tony Osoba, and you're listening to Mark 42's WHOniverse.
Mark 42's WHOniverse.
Welcome to Mark 42's WHOniverse. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten, and with me, of course, is Christian-basel. And we've got our special guest today, Doctor Who actor from both the old series and the new series, Mr. Tony Osoba. Hello, Tony.
Very good afternoon. Good afternoon from where I am. I think it's probably morning where you are.
Yeah,
I think
morning.
we're 5 hours ahead. Talking to you from London, UK, and it's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Tony, for those who don't know you, and there are probably a lot of people who don't, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Well, I'm actually a British actor and have spent many, many years working in mostly television and theatre and a few films, several films along the way. A lot of, I worked pretty well across the board. I mean, comedies, heavy drama, a lot of Shakespeare, played in a lot of Shakespeare plays. So I trained, in fact, at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama in Glasgow in Scotland. 3-year very exhaustive training course there. And then I've lived pretty well most of my life in London. And as I say, I've worked extensively in all fields. I mean, radio drama, television drama, comedy, even things like soaps. I mean, it's a fairly wide-reaching range. Touring theatres, and in fact, I've worked in the United States in the 90s. I was asked by a small touring company based in New Jersey whether I would like to come over and be part of their Shakespeare Festival, which I did. Enjoyed it so much and got on so well that the producer asked me if I would co-produce. So we did further tours, always taking actors British actors from the UK. And the criteria was that all the actors had to have spent some time with either our National Theatre, which is a very prestigious national theatre, as the name says, doing all sorts of classic plays and new plays founded by Laurence Olivier in London, or the Royal Shakespeare Company. So our pool of actors had to be drawn from either one of these two companies, and that was a major selling point in the US. So I spent a great deal of time in the United States in the 90s, touring around, going to various conventions to pitch our show alongside all the other touring productions that were covering the US. So I developed a great fondness for the United States. And my wife Sally and I, we vacation, have a holiday in the US pretty well every year. In fact, this year we've been over there twice. And I worked out the other day of the 50 states I've either worked in, toured in, or had a vacation in, 43 of them. There are only 7 states I've never been in, and that includes the 2 non-contiguous states, Alaska and Hawaii. So I pretty well covered the length and breadth, east to west, north to south. So it's a country I have fond memories of and enjoy visiting and working in whenever I can.
Have you ever been to Florida?
Been to Florida many times. Quite a few times. Played in Gainesville, Jacksonville, Miami.
Anything in Orlando?
Never played in Orlando, no.
Yeah.
Never. And no.
Our home front didn't get a mention.
No, but hey, Miami got a mention.
Oh, I know that.
But I've been in Orlando. I mean, what my wife and I, we enjoyed touring around. So we usually get a car, then decide we're going to stay here, there, and there. And so we stayed a while in Orlando, Clearwater, Tampa. I mean,
when you came here, did you do the Universal, Disney World, Busch Gardens thing?
No. That's not the kind of appeal for me. I mean, it's more. I enjoy more. I mean, when I'm working, that's great. I mean, firstly, every major city in the U.S. or certainly, good. After 2/3 I've been in and worked in and enjoy. But I enjoy just getting out and around and sniffing around, finding out, just tapping into the beat of the city and the town. So I enjoy, finding out old parts of the city and just meandering around. I'm not, I'm not a beach person. I don't like to go and lie on a beach for,
I'm with you on that.
So it's really it's exploring the country, just seeing the different kind. I mean, the United States, I think, is it just is superb. You have many great kind of modern thrusting cities. You can get out into what you call the desert, the western states, which I enjoy traveling a lot. And coming from the UK, one of the things I enjoy a lot about the United States is when you get out into these massive, great kind of landscapes, because you don't see that too much, certainly not in the UK, and not so very much in a lot of parts of Europe. So driving is a major thing. Since I was kid, since I was 2 foot high or something, cars have been a major passion in my life. And by the time I was 10 years old, I could tell you every car on the road. I had so many cars in my life. I remember one time somebody saying to me, "Look, you change cars more often than some people change their shirts." So,
oh wow.
So because of that, United States being geared up for the motorist and driving, it's just a joy for me because I love driving. Everything. I worked out the other day, I've driven just under about 50,000 miles in the States over the last 25 years or so, 25 years. And that covers everything from New York to Chicago to LA to San Francisco to right out in the country and the sticks and places,
And we've had former guests come on that thought the United States was very, I guess for a better term, eclectic, because some states like Florida and New York and Texas, you could drive 30 minutes from one point to another and just see an entirely different country altogether, whereas 30 minutes from like Florida, 30 minutes from the beach to Disney World to actual trees and parks to see, it's very different. And they said, I don't think that's something we have in the UK, so please come on back.
We do. I mean, we have a variety of we have mountains and lakes and beautiful forest areas, but not on the scale that you have in the US, and not to the same extent. I mean, some people say, a lot of Americans don't have passports, and I think, well, Europe is about half the size across from one side of Europe than the United States. And when you have a country with such diverse landscapes, such diverse country, the cities all have their own kind of beat, their own kind of rhythm, and it's just such a multitude of experiences and sights and sounds in the US that you wouldn't need a passport. The variety you can get there is enormous. And also just meeting, most Americans I find very open, friendly, and so wherever you go, you kind of feel welcome and feel relaxed. It's an enjoyable country to travel in, and I look forward to many more trips in the future. And Florida, although not too near you guys, but pretty well around the state. I remember I drove one time from where was it? From Pensacola to Whitewater, Wisconsin. I did that in over something like 11 hours, crazy through the night drive,
wow.
700 miles or something. But I think the longest drive I drove from New York City to Albuquerque, and it took me about a day and a half or something, just a day and a bit. And that was a crazy drive as well. But I just get such a kick since go from here to there. That's the time. Wow, let me go. I just you get away from everything, and it's enjoyable country to be in.
Speaking of traveling, and to bring us closer to where our show goes, in a way, you just traveled to the moon recently. You were in Kill the Moon, weren't you, with Peter Capaldi?
That's right. Kill the Moon, one of the episodes in Peter's first series as the Doctor, and a most extraordinary script, of course, and I would defy anyone to see the end of that coming. and that was, I'd worked on Doctor Who before, 2 different other series. The first one was Tom Baker as the Doctor, and the second one was Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor.
And we'll definitely talk about those.
And so this time working with Peter, I was really looking forward to it because I worked with Peter many years ago. It must be 35 years ago or something, on a very small, tiny little film. And although I bumped into him, we hadn't really seen a great deal. But actors, particularly living in London, you're always bumping into kind of old friends and acquaintances. But for some reason or other, I hadn't seen Peter for many years, and so that was a joy to be meeting up with him again. And he's such a delightful man. I mean, wonderful company, but highly amusing, very clever. And so I was looking forward to that. Looking forward to doing the show, of course, enormously, but to meet up with Peter again was an added bonus. And working on this episode, Kill the Moon, was an absolute joy from start to finish. As you're well aware, that the Doctor Who studios are based in Cardiff, city in Wales, about a couple hundred miles away from London. And so I was there for about a week doing the interior stuff, all the interiors for the episode, and then the crew and the unit had a week's location in Lanzarote.
Yeah.
And that was obviously where they shot the exteriors for the moon surface and that extraordinary kind of craggy, rocky, black-looking terrain that you saw in the episode.
Yeah,
and of course,
it definitely did a good job seconding for the moon. I mean, it's so desolate, kind of like the Western United States in places.
Well, I've never seen anything
not
quite
exactly,
like that in the US.
Desolate,
because Lanzarote is their whole kind of what they call the Canary Islands, Gran Canaria, Lanzarote, and two or three other ones, where it's this group of islands that jut out into the ocean just off the coast of northwest Africa, beg your pardon. And because they were caused by a volcanic action millions of years ago, they have this extraordinary terrain. And some parts of it, the area we were filming in was a particular kind of park, national park within the island of Lanzarote, and the whole thing was unworldly. It didn't, I'd never seen anything on Earth anywhere I've ever traveled before, and I've traveled a lot of different places throughout the world, but I'd never seen a landscape like this. So it was fantastic and rather eerie to work on. I mean, just working on it, and quite difficult because it's rocky, no flat surfaces. So these guys that move all the big equipment around, and they're building the part of the set that has to be built on there. Not easy for these guys because it's sharp, jagged, kind of like very, very solid, say, cinder type material, but so you were slipping and not easy to get a grip on and lay things flat. But looking around it, we were working in a massive volcanic crater, and just this black, rocky kind of terrain just rising up, I don't know how many, 200 or 300 feet above your head. And very still, no animals there, of course, although we did see a couple of small lizards, but no birds, and because there's no foliage, there's nothing for them to feed on or to nest in or anything like that. So it was a very desolate feel to it, and perfect, absolutely perfect for the effect of the moon for the TV show. In fact, I think it's been used several times by film companies, TV companies, because of its extraordinary landscape when they want an extraterrestrial kind of look to a place, a barren, forbidding-looking planet.
Doctor Who has actually used it before in Planet of Fire back in the Peter Davison episodes.
That's right, yes. Yes, they were there before, yes.
Good location. With Kill the Moon, how did you get the part? Was it a standard audition, or were you asked to be on it, or how did it work? How did you get the part?
Yeah, I think, I don't know whether the name was suggested. I mean, Stephen Moffat, of course, just knows everything, retains everything. And there was a suggestion anyway to Paul Wilmhurst, who directed the episodes, that these are names of actors that you might find or interview and speak to, and who might fit the role. And so I went along to meet him, had a session, and we talked, and then a short while later I was delighted when my agent received a phone call saying yes, they'd like to offer the part. And it clashed a little bit with something I was doing, but we were able to work around that, so everything just tied in very, very neatly. So I was very pleased to do it. And then, also, I say, pleased inside to have been on, worked with 3 different Doctors over the years on this series, because it's become an iconic, well, for a long time it was a hugely popular kind of children's show, mostly here. Then it began to attract more adult audiences, and so there was a shift in the thinking, and I think the attitude of making the show, and realizing that actually they were pitching it to a much older audience than it was originally intended for. And then just the success of it in latter years has been enormous, because, again, as you well know, the BBC killed off the series many years ago, just thinking, well, it's run its course, and it doesn't have a great deal more future. But then they thought again, and it was, back it came, and it's more successful than it ever has been.
Yeah.
worldwide basis
Definitely. Doctor Who has, like you said, has been around for a long time, and you were on the classic series twice. The first one was in Destiny-of-the-Daleks as the Mavellan Land. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's the first Doctor Who story I was ever involved in, played a part in, was Destiny of the Daleks. Tom Baker as the Doctor.
Was he a good guy?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Tom, not closely. As I said, it's a kind of or 7 years ago, it was a kind of a village in the middle of London. Soho was the part of London where actors always kind of bumped into each other. You know, they'd be meeting up in pubs and things. They'd been for interviews or auditions or doing voiceover work. And so that little small 1 square mile in the heart of London's city centre, and there were kind of various theatrical clubs and different places there. So you were always bumping into actors that you knew well, actors you didn't know well, actors you recognised. And so I knew Tom not very well, but I'd never worked on anything else with him prior to that, I don't think. And he was always disciplined, gets on with the work. He has an extraordinary kind of presence about him. And he, again, an actor who, before Doctor Who, again, a lot of classical work that Tom did, and so was an unusual choice when he was, massively successful, but people that knew him thought it was, that's an unusual choice. You could see why. And so, so he was fine. He was, nice to work with, and the whole thing was, I remember going into it very quickly because I'd only just come back from Africa. We'd been on location there shooting a TV series and we were on location in Nairobi, or based in Nairobi in Kenya. And so we'd been working pretty hard over there, and so I'd been away from London for, best part of 3 months or so, and then came back, and then suddenly was just asked to go and meet the director, Ken Grieve, one of the wonderful, wonderful director. Just gentle, kind, delightful man, one of the nicest directors I've ever worked for. He was just a joy of a man. And he said, would you be interested in doing that? I'd be delighted to. And so it was a very quick turnaround. Within a few days, off for wardrobe fittings and makeup and all the pre-shooting stuff.
And what a wardrobe that was.
What an extraordinary wardrobe it was. When we saw it, and of course the three of us, the other Mavellans, there were 3 central Mavellans, and it was myself, Peter Straker, and Suzanne Danielle. Now, we're all 3 of us gigglers, and I control it pretty well, but I can be pretty naughty. I can just have to catch your eye and give you a slight look, and, that will convulse people. And dressed as we were, for those that don't know, and I'm sure pretty well most of the listening audience do, sheer kind of silky white body-hugging tights and bodice, long kind of dreadlock type wigs. That was supposed to be our hairs, but again painted silver, so they were these silvery white creatures. And of course, true to the nature of pretty well most filming anywhere you go in the world, and certainly in the UK, rather perversely, I filmed so much stuff that's supposed to be shot on moderate climbs or something, and we shoot it in the dead depths of winter in icy, freezing cold, horrible locations around the UK. And that particular episode, I recall one of the things that comes back to me immediately whenever the name's mentioned is that we shot a lot of Planet Skaro. We were down in a big, huge sand quarry in a part of southern England, and not so far, only about 60, 70 miles away from London. But, it was sand and slippery underfoot and quite rocky. And so you just knew as soon as you saw the costume and had your first costume fitting, because you've been around the block a few times, as we say, you knew what was what in filmmaking. You thought, on location, this is not going to be too much fun, because pristine white, trying to keep these costumes clean and trying not to slip on the ground and fall over, because then there'd be a great muddy mark or a sandy mark on the thing, and the costume department would have terrible trouble trying to clean the things up. So you were on pain of death not to get these costumes. So when the camera turns over and when you're actually, going for a shot, you've rehearsed it so you know where your feet are going to go. But other times where you have to just be careful because you've got a break while there's a new setup, or they change the lighting or whatever is going on. And most of, as you know, filming entails sitting around and hanging around. Now, sometimes you can utilize that by rehearsing or going over your lines for the next scene or something later in the day or the following day. Other times, there's really not a great deal to be done, but what you have to be very careful of is you don't just suddenly sit down somewhere on a piece of ground or you think, oh, God, or you don't just lean on something and suddenly you've got a great big stain on your elbow and things. And so it was, the fraud was kind of constantly trying to remember at the back of your head all the time. Oh, no, mustn't go there. Oh, mustn't go too near that little group of people in case somebody steps back and they have a muddy footprint on top of mine. That shiny white silvery shoe. You're obsessed with trying to keep this thing clean. So that was part of the remembering the shooting of Destiny-of-the-Daleks. And in fact, the other episode, the other story I did, Dragonfire, was a similar thing. Again, I was presented with a pristine white uniform.
Yeah, they were.
But at least most of that was, not all of it, but most of that was indoors, so that was much easier to keep clean. But, I remember Destiny as, it was a fun time. I mean, particularly because the three of us, the three Novellans, Suzanne, Peter and myself, and Peter Straker, mostly best known for doing West End musicals and things. Wonderful singing voice and tremendous all-round actor. But we had just a lot of fun, a lot of laughter and giggles and enjoyment working on that. And brings back very happy memories.
Back in the 80s, you did a radio series called Space Force.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
With Roderick Sincere. And
Roderick Sincere, yeah.
Do you have anything about that? Any memories of that?
Well, again, there were three of us, three central characters. Right. And Nicky Henson, again, a little bit like myself, has a twinkle in the eye, and so we had a lot of time in between, again, takes. It was a fun job. The time flew by because we were entertaining ourselves, the three of us. And for the most part, people couldn't imagine, I'm sure they know, you're in a small little radio studio. There's not a great deal to look at or do, and the effects are played around you, and you're sitting in front of your mic, and at least you have the luxury, if you want to not have to learn your lines. You go,
yeah.
That's a joy for working on the radio. I mean, sometimes you have to be careful. I mean, usually you wouldn't learn the lines, but you do have to be very careful not to get paper rustle and so on, and so you learn all the little techniques.
And you didn't have to keep your costume clean.
Yeah, you didn't have to keep your costume clean. That was good. That's good.
And you didn't have to keep your costume clean. No, that's a huge... Yeah, no, I've done a lot of radio work, a lot of radio plays, and it has an atmosphere of, these working in the studio. They're usually very convivial, and nice. You're seen as if you're cut off from the world because everything's, soundproofed, of course, and you seem as if you're locked away in some kind of timeless chamber somewhere while you're making these things. And it's a comfortable and enjoyable time in the radio studio. Yes, so Space Force, yes, another one.
If Big Finish, the company that does the audio adventures of Doctor Who, ever asked you to do it, would you do it?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I would, yes, Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I know they're enormously popular and successful, the productions they do. No, certainly I'd do that. I mean, very few things that I ever would say no to anyway. But yeah, no, that would be something that I imagine would be rewarding to do and fun to do for an actor.
Doctor Who is my favorite series, but there is a show in England that I love to pieces, EastEnders. Now, I know you've never actually done EastEnders, but you did do a TV movie, Perfectly Frank, with Mike Reed as Frank Butcher, which was part of it, was like an EastEnders spin-off.
That's right. Well, Mike Reed, the actor, remember, he was one of the main characters in EastEnders. I mean, I've done the other great rival kind of television
Street, yeah.
in this country, Coronation Street it's called. I've actually played on that show twice as two different characters over the years. But EastEnders, no, I've never done. But the show you're talking about, Perfectly Frank, Mike Reed, who for most of his life was a comedian, stand-up comedian guy, and then turned to acting later in life, as it were. He played a major central character, Frank Butcher, in EastEnders. And
I love his character.
He was a wonderful character. All right, yeah, you did Christian, yeah, all right. He's kind of... a ducker and diver, kind of dodgy, Cockney London geezer, and he ran the pub and stuff for a while. But so his background, as I say, was a comedian. So he was. I mean, I'd met him on a couple of charity dues over the years, and I'd played charity football matches for raising funds for various good causes and things from time to time, and he'd been the MC at the dinner and so on afterwards. I'd met him, didn't know him well, but we'd come across each other and knew each other to kind of say hello to. So when I was asked to do that series, I was just delighted because I thought, he's a big, larger-than-life character, and we got on so well. We got on really well on that series. It was a relatively small cast, so quite intimate, and you had to kind of get on. Unfortunately, we did, and again, he had something in common with me. He was a car man as well, so we would exchange tales and notes about cars and so on, and very generous guy, and I remember that series with enormous fondness. I mean, very few things, one or two, that you don't want to kind of dwell on and go back to, but most of the work I've done over the years, touching wood, which is right in front of me here, it has been a pleasure to work on. And that series was one, and I enjoyed very much working on that. And in fact, Mike sadly passed away not so very long after we did that series. The series was fairly reasonably successful, and they were proposing, I think, to do a follow-up series, because Mike, he'd done EastEnders, the television soap, for I don't know how many years, but quite a number of years, and so much so that although in the public's mind, before he went on EastEnders, he was this stand-up comedian, London Cockney cheeky kind of chappy comedian, but that was kind of erased. EastEnders was so big and so huge that his persona, his character there, took over, and he'd done it for quite a long time. It's quite demanding when you're running on, when you're doing these soaps for years. You're working pretty hard, long hours most days. You get some time off here and there. The rewards are there, but it's quite demanding work. It's not an easy life, as a lot of people might imagine. And so I don't know how many years he'd been on the show for, but I think Mike just felt, that's enough, and so he left it and did various other things. So when this TV show came up, which, as you know, he was playing his character from EastEnders, but they'd taken him away from this London kind of
you were in Somerset?
Little part of London scenery where EastEnders is set, and the east end of London, and they'd made his character having travelled away to the west side of England, well away from London, and started a new life over there. So he starts trying to get a little club together and so on over there. And so I became his kind of right-hand man. And that was a very enjoyable series. And I would have loved to have gone on to do more, had things been different.
Now, I have a question for you, Tony. Going back to Doctor Who, and I'm sure our friends and fans want to know, working with the three different actors, was there something different that was different amongst the actors, like a different feel, a different way that they treated you and such? And is there any good behind-the-scenes stories that may have come up between either Tom or Sylvester or Peter?
I don't think. I mean, I think first and foremost, what you knew. They didn't make it obvious, but what you knew, because being an actor, you knew that if you were in that role, what the demands would be. That enormous workload playing that role, and all three of these, and I'm sure every other actor who's played Doctor Who, were also the same, that tremendous discipline and tremendous amount of hard work, because there is a lot of lines for Doctor Who. There's sort of line learning, and there's no easy way around for any actor. No actor has some kind of magic wand that they say, this is, the technique, it's just hard graft, it's hard work. You have to keep going over and over. And if you're fortunate to have somebody in your life who can help you with it, all the better. But, it's the same way you would learn lines. If somebody said, right, there's a 3-page speech, learn that for tomorrow. It's just repetition, going through it and understanding what the scene is. And so the workload on playing a central character like that, so all three actors, tremendously disciplined, tremendously dedicated to what they were doing. And you couldn't play that role. You couldn't take on that road and not be like that. And yet all three of them had time to be sociable with the guest actors on the show, to be friendly and funny and enjoying it. You know, nobody was aloof from the other actors. Nobody thought of themselves as, you know, I'm the grand lead of the show and everyone else is just and of course they would grab time through the day, knowing that whatever scene we're working on, that they had another scene. You know, it's fine for the guest actors. Maybe you've got 2 scenes, then you've got 3 hours off while they do other scenes. The Doctor doesn't have a great deal of time off, so during the day, all of them would be grabbing time whenever they could to rehearse and go through the lines for 2 scenes hence, 3 scenes hence, whatever they knew the rest of the day had. But the way of playing was different, and the process of what you do is different. It would be the same for me. I mean, all actors find their way of working, particularly when you've got a very heavy workload and heavy demanding scenes coming up. You have your own way of dealing with it. Some like a bit of solitude and just go over and over the lines until the last minute. That would be my way of doing it. Some are very comfortable just thinking it through in their head, but having a bit of company around. It's just different ways of approaching the task in hand. And producers and so on, they don't care how you get there as long as you get there, and as long as you know when they say, right, turn over action, that you're ready to go. So in all 3 cases, they all were sociable, friendly, funny, and yet were able to find the time around the place to either excuse themselves for a while they took themselves off to work. I mean, the other actors also would want to find time to go over and rehearse the scenes coming up and so on. Funny things behind the scenes. I remember in Dragonfire with Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor. One of my very closest friends has been for many, many years, an actor called Tony Selby, and we.
Yeah, Sabalom Glitz.
Well, Sabalom Glitz was his character, recurring character in Doctor Who, and Tony and I, he came to stay with me for a while in my flat when he was looking for a new place. I mean, his wife and my wife are the closest of friends, and we played on charity soccer teams for actors' soccer teams many years ago, and so we just we're kind of like brothers. He's a very close friend. And I remember in Dragonfire, there was a scene, and most of Dragonfire, of course, was shot indoors in studios, so it was all kind of studio-built sets and things. And I just remember desperately trying not to laugh because it was a scene I actually wasn't involved, but as an actor I was standing on the side, and the other actors, Tony and Sylvester and Eddie Peel and the various other actors around were going through the scene, and it was actually a take. And Tony's character, he stepped back. At one point he has to take half a pace back while he's delivering the dialogue. And he misjudged his step, and his foot went straight through this kind of papier-mâché flooring stuff that was just, there was a hard patch of the floor where the actors knew they could walk on, but then the rest of it off your path. And so you had to remember your path because it wasn't delineated in any clear way. So you had to know, right, well, I can take 2 steps that way, then slightly to my right, and then go on, sharp turn to my left. So all these things are going on in your head as an actor while you're trying to deliver the lines and retain the character you're in. And so it can be quite tricky anyway. On this occasion, Tony got caught out. His foot went straight through the floor. There was just a tiny glimmer of reaction on his face, but kept going because he knew the camera was on. Kept in character, whilst the lower half and the camera, I think, only was kind of waist-high upwards, so he knew that, and or that particular shot was only waist-high up, so he desperately tried to shake his leg free whilst not having the upper part of his body moving around. He just had me in fits. I mean, I was just hysterical. And said, at least I had the decency not to get in his eye line because he was just a burst. I mean, they would just have had to go on again. But he felt that particular take, he was kind of on it, and he liked the take from his point of view, and he thought, I don't want to do anything to destroy us. But so it was very, very funny seeing the top half of this actor manfully carrying on in character, and the bottom half trying to kick 7 bells out of this set to get his foot free. And the image of that, just talking about it now, just breaks me up. It was funny, and particularly, as I say, because he's such a close friend, that it was even funnier for me.
How is he doing these days? We haven't heard much about him, at least from here in the States.
Yeah, he did. Well, we meet up for dinner. I was over at his place, only last week. My wife and I were over at his place, and we had a meal and everything. And he's He did a film. I watched a film. I didn't see it at the time, but he did a film last year called Zombies.
Cockneys and Zombies. I think I've heard of that. I haven't seen it yet, but I think that's Cockneys and Zombies. I think.
Cockneys and Zombies, Cockneys and Zombies, or Zombies and Cockneys. Cockneys and Zombies.
I missed that one. I missed that.
I've just heard of it.
It's one of these. I mean, it's a handful of. And Tony's, again, very London, born and brought up in London, and it's a handful of these Cockneys, these Londoners. Suddenly, these zombies appear from wherever, and the place is flooded, and they with zombies, and they're on the march, and they're chewing up whoever they come across, and they trap this group of Cockneys in this kind of residential home, and the film, it has some very, very funny moments. And
I have to watch it's a movie I have to watch now. I have to see that now.
It is, well, and I think it was only, I think done last year, so, and as saying with that genre of film, then that kind of film, the more gore, the more zombies are. Yeah. But what they got, and for one, you've seen so many of these zombie films, all of us, we've seen so many of them, and the zombies are drooling blood, and they're dragging their leg behind them, and their arms are almost dragging on the floor and making these noises. And sometimes they can be convincing, sometimes not so much. And in this film, I thought they were terrific. And I was asking Tony about, they have quite a lot of them, lots of zombie extras and these additional characters. And he said, well, they actually got them. There's some, I don't know, a lot of people, who specialise in enjoying different things. I'd never heard of them before, but there's a zombie appreciation society or a zombie, fan club. And there are these people who I have no idea, but I fantasize and imagine that they gather for their evenings out a couple of times a year, and they all dress up as zombies and put their prosthetic teeth in and blood. But whatever they do, but they get together and they talk about zombies, and they speculate about zombies. So they got, somebody knew about this group, and they got in touch with them, and they played all these zombie extras, all these characters that come over railings and up stairwells and go down the streets. And I have to say, as zombies go, they were pretty well, I think, the best I've ever seen in a zombie film.
Wow.
Yeah, they were fantastic, all these sections. And you could see that they were taking it absolutely seriously. And so when Tony explained, there's some kind of zombie appreciation loss, and so you can see that they put their heart and soul into it, and it works very well. Some very funny moments as well. It's escapism. Just put your feet up and enjoy the ride kind of films. But anyway, so Tony, back to putting his foot through the set in Doctor Who. That was a funny moment. I can't think of too many. Well, certainly in Destiny of the Daleks, as I said before, that the three of us, Peter Straker, the three Movellans, Peter Straker, Suzanne, Danielle, and myself, we're all got a glint in our eye. We have that ability to make somebody just giggle, by just having a look, and you can look deadpan at them, but they know the look. And so there was an enormous amount of that going on. And in the end, Peter just could not look me in the eye. I could look at him, and I would be able to still control it and still deliver the lines and not break up too much. But Peter would just begin to go, "Cut. Is there a problem, Peter?" No, nothing. Okay, all right, reset. Let's go again. All right, turn over, stand by, action. And Peter would just studiously either look past my left ear if he was supposed to be talking to me directly, or anything but look me in the eye. So a lot of fun goes on making some of these. So I remember that, a lot of good humour and fun from we three Movellans, so as well as trying to keep ourselves clean and tidy and not incur the wrath of the wardrobe and the costume department. A lot of giggles, a lot of fun. And not very warm at times, because, as I said before, we were shooting a lot of this stuff in not cold, not icy, snowy climates, but that kind of cold, dank, damp, dark, not very pleasant kind of weather.
Yeah. We'll be right back with more of Mark Who 42's Whoniverse here on Krypton Radio with our special guest, Tony Osoba. Attention all Whovians! While you're waiting for the new episode of Doctor Who, start your own adventures with a book from Mark Who 42 Books. They carry unique and rare books at affordable prices. visit amazon.com/shops/markwho42. That's amazon.com/shops/markwho42. Mark Who 42 books. Set your imagination free into the Whoniverse.
Say, Jarvis, is it that time?
The house party protocol, sir?
Correct.
The Pull Bag is GCRN's comic book review and discussion-based podcast. Join me, your host, TFG and Mike, and the rest of the GCRN crew as we make our way through the comics we are reading. Inside the Pull Bag, you'll also find back-issue classics and origins episodes of how we got into comic reading. You can find the Pull Bag every Wednesday on iTunes and on www.geekcast-radio.com. Make your great escape into comics and jump into the Pull Bag today.
Jarvis. Hey.
All wrapped up here, sir. Will there be anything else?
Pixels in the Animation is the Geekcast Radio Network's video game cartoon review show. We are covering every episode of 9 different video game cartoons. Join TV's Mr. Neil and myself, TFG and Mike, as we trek through multiple Mario tunes, Zelda, Captain N, Mega Man, Sonic, and we are also driving through Donkey Kong Country. Pixels in the Animation is 100 episodes of video game cartoon goodness, so tune in to help us find the Pixels in the Animation, which you can find every Wednesday on iTunes and www.geekcast-radio.com.
Hello, this is Rob Shearman, and you're listening to Mark Who 42 Whoniverse.
Welcome back to Mark Who 42's Whoniverse, Doctor Who Whoniverse, that is. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten, and with me today are Christian-basel and our special guest, Tony Osoba. This is a question I usually ask at the beginning of the interview, and we got so into the interview we forgot it. When you got the role in Destiny of the Daleks, were you a Doctor Who fan? Did you watch Doctor Who when you were younger?
I did. I watched Patrick Troughton, I remember watching.
Okay.
I saw a few with William Hartnell, but Patrick Troughton I enjoyed, but it wasn't a program that I avidly watched throughout my life. I mean, if I'm around and home, but it wasn't, in the days even before you could record programs, for example. It probably wouldn't have been something I'd recorded. I enjoyed it, and they were, and they were fun to watch and things. But if it was on, but there was a bunch of kids playing football, or if there was something, I probably wouldn't be watching the television. I mean, I didn't watch a huge amount of television around that time, and certainly then, and then as a younger man, and so on, when I was a young actor and things. I mean, I went for years hardly watching television, not as a deliberate thing, just because you were busy in the theatre or doing this or doing that, or you were working, and so there were many things I appeared in that I'd never seen. When they came out, you were either abroad on location, or you were doing this, or you were working on something else. And so in these days, you can get box sets of all sorts of different shows.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've worked on many different series. I mean, some as a regular character, some as a guest actor on others. And so quite often it's, oh gosh, that's what it looks like. It's quite interesting sometimes to see something you worked on and you see it for the first time. If it was on and I'm in, or if I knew I could be in, then, you, of course, try and make an effort to see something you're in. But I'd say many other times it's beyond you're out of the country, or you're on stage, or you're on location somewhere shooting something else. And so things, quite often things pass you by that you just don't get a chance to see.
I mean, would you consider yourself a Whovian? And especially with the 3 episodes that you've been in, would you consider yourself that?
Consider myself a what?
A Whovian.
A Whovian. I consider myself a Whovian from the point of view that I've appeared, and was enormously pleased to do so, in 3, not just 3 different stories of Doctor Who, but 3 different Doctors. I mean, it's quite a nice warm glow inside. I feel, that's something that's really nice to have done that. And particularly the classic series and the new series, for example. It's I just think, that's quite a nice span. And also, I think the 3 episodes, the 3 storylines that I played a part in, were all quite characteristic of that Doctor's period, as it were, at least as far as I can judge. I mean, I'm sure people, of course, know the show much better and study. I mean, I've never seen an entire series of Doctor Who from start to finish. I've seen some box sets and things over here, and I've seen some repeats of episodes and things when they come up. But yeah, I do feel a sense of kind of achievement that, that's rather nice. It's a nice warm glow. There's a feeling of satisfaction of having, and a trio is something, it's nice to have been in with two doctors, but a trio is something else. It has a different kind of feel to it. And so it's very pleasing to think on that.
We've been talking to you for a long time about your past, your career, Doctor Who, and we were wondering, do you have any new shows coming out or any new plays or anything you're doing coming up that we could talk about?
Yeah, well, there's a film I did this year, Extended Rest. It's about a snooker player. Not much snooker in the United States, but it's the equivalent. It's pool. It's the pool on a large-sized table with, many, many more balls. And the character I was playing, the central character, who's somebody who was once a pretty high-ranking snooker player, and then his career faded and so on. And he's a member of a little local club, and there's somebody in the club that's a bit of a boorish person, never pays his bills, and the club can't afford to have people like that. Everyone has to kind of pay them. So the story is around the rivalry of this character and the other character who doesn't pay the bills and so on. And that was fun. That was a nice job to do. There was another film I did playing a fairly rough and ready, kind of fairly acerbic garage mechanic. As a young guy comes with his car, and the character treats this guy pretty horribly. And so that was a different kind of change of role. And there was another film I did not so long ago, but I know that hasn't yet finished editing. It's a film about somebody who very small cast film. There's a central character who you see him. There's not a great deal of dialogue in the film, and you don't quite know what he's doing. You follow his movements every day. It seems a very ordinary existence, and then begin to realize it's not, and then you realize towards the end, hopefully with a shock, that this character is something really that you would never have dreamt of, never have guessed at.
Is there a title of that film?
The working title, as far as I know, is called Waiting for the Dead.
Uh-huh.
But I know that's not finished in edit. Yes. And also, I spent a lot of time this year that there was a comedy series I did many years ago, and it had an anniversary this year. A comedy television series called Porridge.
And I left that out, but I wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah.
It was a series called Porridge, porridge being a slang term in the UK, or among many other slang terms for prison. Somebody says, "Oh, you're doing porridge," or "He was doing porridge." Not afraid you'd hear too much today, but it meant you were doing time. You were behind bars. You were, locked up. And so these comedy writers, Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenne, they did an American version called On the Rocks many years ago.
Never saw that. I've seen Porridge. Never saw On the Rocks.
Right, well, On the Rocks, Porridge, again, it was written as a vehicle for, certainly somebody who's no longer with us, Ronnie Barker, who was...
Two Ronnies, yeah.
Two Ronnies, many TV shows Ronnie did, Ronnie Barker. And,
Funny man.
But one of probably, maybe people think maybe his best work ever was as this character Fletcher, who's a kind of petty thief and criminal, and winds up, he's a habitual kind of criminal, and so he always winds up back in prison. And so he's not a hard, tough, vicious, nasty man, but Ronnie's own charm. And Ronnie was, a comic actor, and rather than a comedian, he was always a comic actor. And the other, when he did the two Ronnies, Ronnie Corbett, for example, was a stand-up comedian. Right. But the two of them worked together, so there's a big difference between a comic actor and a comedian. Ronnie Barker in Porridge, he's an actor, and he developed this character. The writing was superb. Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenne, superb writing. And so they had this central character, and it was just, each episode was his daily battles about how to get one over on the system, how to get one over on the governor of the prison, how to get one over on the two particular prison attendants, warders who were in charge of the wing that he was on. And around Ronnie's central character were several other fairly disparate petty criminals, and one of them was a character played by me, and the character I played was a hard-nosed, kind of hot-headed, character whose first recourse to any kind of problem was violence. And
Jock McLaren.
So it was very fun, and it was hugely successful here, enormously successful, one of the most popular comedy programs ever on British television. And so this year was the 40th anniversary of the making of the first series. So one of the other actors, Christopher Biggins, who played this very kind of gay, effete prisoner, he and I and another actor who sadly passed away earlier in the year, Sam Kelly, three of us were spent a lot of the year doing publicity things and talking to all sorts of different radio station things all around the UK about Porridge and the making of it and the anniversary of it. So it was a big year for Porridge and the celebration of that show. So that was also a very enjoyable part of this year. It was something we did from time to time. So for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks here, we'd be doing these things and then meet up again a little while later, do some more publicity stuff, or go around. And so to be reminded of that show and to spend time with these guys again was just, again, a lot of fun. And Dick and Ian moved off to Los Angeles very early on, in the middle of the making of the Porridge series, and they've lived there ever since, but, they come backwards and forwards. And it was a pleasure to meet up with Dick Clement, who I hadn't seen for many years. And so I didn't manage to see Ian this year, the other writer, but it was nice. So that was again, very enjoyable part of the year, meeting up and talking about that old show and reviving memories from the days that we all worked on it.
Now, as far as people finding other works specifically, do you have any web presence or Facebook site that people could find you? And as we did, could find you and see any future projects coming up that you have on the web?
Well, there's a website, Tony Osoba website.
Yeah,
I'm not on Facebook, not on Twitter. There are several friends. There's a director friend of mine who, one of the things I'm working on now is writing a script for where I live. As all big cities are made up of kind of little villages, not really villages, but little areas, I think. And I live in a part of London called Twickenham. And next year there's a little private members club that I'm a member of here. And so a director friend of myself was making this film because next year's the 150th anniversary of this club. So we're making quite a fun little film about other aspects of Twickenham, but particularly celebrating the 150th anniversary of this little club. So in between things, I've been trying to grab time to write that and hone it and liaise with the director and find times where he's free or I'm free. And it's proving quite tricky just to liaise and, have times that coincide and so on. So working on that, and that's a fun thing to do. I've always enjoyed writing. I've never really written professionally, but I've also the act of writing, and so I've always enjoyed writing emails or writing short accounts. So I'm quite enjoying that, but it's quite different when you're trying to do it to a deadline.
Right. So if anybody wants to see Tony, all of his body of work, go to www.tonyosoba.com, and you'll get a lot on Tony, and especially projects that he's been in the past, pictures from episodes he's done from other series and movies. Yeah, we just found a lot of information on you.
Right. The other thing I just mentioned is that I was talking about Tony Selby, an actor who played Sablon Blitz in some of the Doctor Who stories, and he's an old friend from way back. And there's another friend, Shirin Taylor, and Shirin also appeared in a Doctor Who. And there's again a young director friend of mine who was a massive Who fan, who's most definitely a Whovian. And he asked me if I'd do this little film with him 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember. It was about 3 years ago. And it's called Friends Like Who. And the idea was that because he knew that I had 2 very close friends, and all 3 of us had actually worked on the same storyline of Doctor Who on Dragonfire.
Right.
And he said, could he do a film? Because we're all, the 3 of us, friends away from the set. We're friends, we see each other a lot. So we filmed. They agreed. He said would I ask them if they'd be happy to do it, and they were. And so the three of us, just as ourselves, filmed a little film of the three of us walking around parts of Twickenham, the area that I live in, and one of the other friends, she lives pretty close to it as well. And Tony Osoba, the three of us just walking around some parts of Twickenham and just recounting among ourselves our recollections of working on that particular episode, but also from the perspective of working on it and having close friends also involved in it. And so that would be of interest perhaps to, real aficionados who might want to have a look at that. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it's certainly pretty well. You can get it online. It's just called Friends Like Who.
Friends Like Who. Okay, we'll definitely look into that. Tony Osoba. Tony, I'd like to thank you very much for appearing on Mark Who 42's Whoniverse.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me, and I don't know if you can email me your address next time I'm anywhere near wherever you might be. You're in Orlando, did you say?
Christian's in Orlando. I'm in the Miami Fort Lauderdale area.
Oh, right. Well, I know that. I played the Kravitz Center.
Yes, I know where the Kravitz Center is. Yeah.
Yeah, I played there many years ago.
Oh.
Played in a production of Macbeth.
Wow.
So. Yes, I know. It's a beautiful part of the world. Nice place to live around there. All right. Well, best of luck to you two guys, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. And who knows? Maybe I'll see you in Florida one day.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Tony Osoba for letting us interview him. This is Mark Who 42's Whoniverse on Krypton Radio. Don't forget to go to mark-who42.net and join the Whoniverse Army. We've got our podcast there, as well as Doctor Who news, birthdays, reviews, and other fun stuff. Go to our Facebook page, Mark Who 42's Whoniverse. Tweet us at Mark Who 42. You can listen to older episodes at iTunes. Look for Mark Who 42's Doctor Who Whoniverse. Go to florida-geek-scene.com, geekcast-radio.com, and of course, like I said, mark-who42.net. Well, that's the end of our show today. Next week, we will have coverage of last week's Magic City Comic-Con, which was held in Miami. It was a fun convention. Even have a short interview with guest Dan Starkey. And it was lovely meeting Colin Baker. And Karen Gillan was here, too. There were a lot of people there. So join us next week, and we will see you, or rather, you'll listen to us next time here on Mark Who 42's Whoniverse. Bye. Mark Who 42's Whoniverse has been written and presented by Mark Baumgarten and Christian-basel. This show was edited, produced, and directed by Mark Baumgarten. Please visit mark-who42.net and register to join and be a part of the Whoniverse Army. We can be contacted by email at mark@mark-who42.net with the subject line ? If you have worked on Doctor Who or are working on a project relating to Doctor Who and want to be on our radio show, please email our media relations director, christian-basel, at mark-who42media@yahoo.com. Doctor Who and its properties are owned by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. This show is owned and copyrighted by Mark Baumgarten, 2015. You're listening to Krypton Radio.